Hi, my name is George Pearson, and this special Photoshop Elements video is part of a series that I have on doing photography techniques for wedding photography. You can see a few examples in here from the different videos. Now, all of these are using images that are available free on the internet, and I have a link in the description for you to download the videos if you want to work with the same images that I'm using in my video demonstrations. Please subscribe, click the like button, and of course always share on Facebook, Twitter, or wherever. I really appreciate that. Okay, let's go ahead and get started with the video. In this Photoshop Elements project, we're going to look at several different ways of putting pictures into a wedding photo album. I actually have 4 different techniques I'm going to be showing you here. All of these are variations on these, can be used for adding a little bit of spice or zest to a photo album. Now, the first thing we need to do is to create our basic page that has the pictures on that. Let me just close this out, get that out of the way. I'll be setting this up as a new file, and we'll be doing this at 10 by 10 inches, which is a standard size for a wedding album. Just make these match your wedding album size, obviously. Choose OK. There we go. Here's our basic file. Now we need to have a background in here. So for the background, let me just pull something up over here. We have a few images. Now I've used a lot of pictures in here. Actually, I have 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 pictures in here. The links for all of these are in the description. They're also on the download page as well. Let me just start off with this picture here. And we'll pull this one in. There we go. Get that closed out. Let's go back up here. I'm just going to open up all of these files and get them all into our main file. We'll resize them as needed here as we go. And let's see, here's our next one. There we are. Bring that one in. And then the next file here is that red rose. Bring that one in. And then finally, we have a bouquet here. And we'll just bring that in. Okay, so now I have all the pictures in here. And I'm just going to roughly put them about where I'll be using. I'll be putting this one down here towards the bottom right corner. This one is going to be upper corner there. I can hide those two now. Be using this as our background, so I'll just put that right in the middle for the moment. Putting the rose down there and the bride picture over here. And we'll hide those two. Now I'm going to resize this. This doesn't need to be exact. It even can be a little bit off. It doesn't really matter on this because we're using it as a very subtle background piece. So there it is. And I'll pull that down just above our background. Now between this and the background, I want to have another fill layer in here. So I'll make a new layer. And we're going to fill this with a light tan color. Click on the foreground color, and then just something in here somewhere, something in a nice light tan or yellow. It doesn't really matter exactly what that color is. I'm just using something a bit on the light side in here. If you want to use exactly what I had on my sample that I showed at the beginning of the video, that was FFF1C6 right there. Just a light color. I'll then fill this, grab the paint bucket and fill. There we go. Now I want to blend this bouquet picture into that background to give us our whole background effect. And that's easy to do just using our blending modes up here. So come down, we're going to go all the way down here to luminosity, and that just blends in just the values on that. And then I'll bring down the transparency on this, or the opacity. Bring it down to about 15%. There we go. And this is just a nice subtle something in the background there for us to work with. Okay, so that takes care of our background. I'm just going to expand this a little bit here. There we are. Now we want to have some guidelines to divide this up into 4 pieces. And you can pull your guidelines in if you want to, and it should snap right to the center just like that. There we go. Just snaps to the center. you may want to make sure you leave a border out here, maybe a 1/2 inch border. So I'll pull in some more guidelines. I'll put them at approximately the 1/2 inch out point. If you zoom in, you can get a lot more accurate on that. I'm just going to do this visually here just for this demo, but I probably zoom in to make sure these are exactly at the 1/2 inch point. There we go. So we have our basic quadrants. Now we can begin putting our pictures in and getting them basically resized. We'll start here, and I'll just hold the Alt key down, and that will then grow this proportionally and also from the center. As you can see, I'll make it about that big. Just kind of stick it in the middle, choose OK. So that one's set. Let's go up here. This one's quite a bit too large, so again, hold the Alt key down and let's shrink this down to fit. I want this one a little bit larger for the effect we'll be doing later on that, so I'll just leave that about that size. That's good. Come down to the rows. Now this can be a little bit larger. Again, Alt key, and I'll bring that size up a little bit. That's pretty good. And then finally, our bride picture up here is a little large for what I want. I'll bring that down just a bit. That'll give us enough space to work with on that. Okay, so there's the basic images in their basic positions. We'll start off down here with the rows, so we can just zoom in on that now. And on this one, we'll be doing a soft edge vignette. Now, there are lots of ways of doing vignettes, but the technique I'll show you here gives you a little bit of freedom to come in and modify the softness of the edge very nicely. So first, we're going to pull in some guidelines here and put them about where I want them, top and bottom, about how much I want to see the top and the bottom of that rows, about that much. And I'll bring them in on the sides of just about how much I want to see on these sides. So about in there, I think, is about right. So inside of this area is what I'll be looking at. Now we're going to come in and add a shape in here. Let's go over to our shapes, and I'll be doing an elliptical shape right there, an ellipse. The color doesn't matter. Make sure you're on unconstrained right here, and then I'm going to click on this crosshair, this guideline, and we'll just drag it down to this bottom right hand corner on those guidelines. Make sure that your snap to guides is selected. It is by default, so it probably is already selected. Just make sure that that's selected. So it's Windows, Snap to, and Guides. Okay, I'll hold it over here, click and drag, and down to the bottom one, and notice how that just clicks onto those guidelines. Just grab those guidelines. Okay, now let's pull the shape in behind the rows. There we are. And now I'm going to be using a clipping mask technique here to put the rows inside of that ellipse. Make sure on the rows layer, and then layer, create clipping mask. There it is. Notice they have a hard edge on here. The edge is controlled by the shape layer. Now I need to soften that up, but I can't soften it out if it's a shape, so we need to simplify this shape. So let's right click and simplify layer. There we are. Now we can blur this layer out and actually soften up that edge very controllably. So filter, blur, and Gaussian blur. There we go. So now I can come in and I can actually just kind of play around with this until I get just exactly the right amount of blur to have on there. This is much more controllable than other techniques I'm sure you've seen elsewhere. So there we go. There's a real nice blur on that. Choose OK, and that's all set to go. If you think that you might want to go back and change your blur, just make a copy of this layer first as a backup, and then do your blur afterwards. And you can always go back to your original hard-edged layer. Okay, there's our first technique, and that's putting an image into a vignette and then using a controlled blur on that vignette. Alright, next technique. Let's go up here. I'm going to hide that picture, just get that out of the way. We no longer need these guidelines. I'm done with the guidelines at this point, so we can hide those guidelines. I'm just going to clear those out. There we go. And on this one, I want to have rounded corners on this. And we're also going to be giving this a frame and a glow around the frame. I'll be doing a few different things here. So let's find our picture, and that's that layer right there. Now we'll be doing the exact same thing we did on the previous technique by making a shape, but this time, let's go back to our shapes. Let's grab this, the rounded rectangle. Now I've already tested this, and I found that for this one, 50 pixels works out fine. You may need to try it and test your size on that to get just the right pixel size. Now bring this right up here to the top left of the image and drag down to the bottom right of the image. That gives us that shape. I can now take this shape, pull it in behind the image, and then just like before, let's make a clipping mask about this. And we'll go up here to Layer, Clipping Mask, and that clips those corners for us. There we go. Now it's inside of that clipping mask, so I can always change the masks as if I want to change my clipping on that. So you can come in here and you can change this image size. You can actually pull that in a little bit, and you'll notice how the clipping stays on that, and the whole image stays inside that clipping mask. I can also go up here to my image and move the image around a little bit. Now, if I go too far, you see the edges. But I have a little bit of ability here to adjust the position as well. Notice it's just outside of that clipping mask. If I brought the mask in further, I have a little more space to move the image around and then just resize them both together. Okay, so that's the first part of our process. Now, I want to have a frame on this, put a frame out here. So I'm going to do a couple of things. Let's go back up here to our image, and I'm going to pull in some guidelines. Now in this case, notice how it's kind of snapping to that picture. I don't want that to happen there. Let's go down to our other level. That should do it. And this should snap right onto that shape that we did. I can now bring in more guidelines and use this to eyeball or determine exactly where I want to have on my frame thickness, so I can make my frame decisions here before I actually make the frame. This gives me, again, a little bit of control. You can resize your frame later, of course, but this just helps you a little bit. Okay, so there's kind of where I want my frame. Same thing back to the rounded rectangle. I'll use the same one. Click out here at this outer cross, and then right down to the right hand side, same thing. And that gives me a new shape. I need to pull this underneath my first shape. There we go. So this is the shape that's our clipping mask. That's that one. And then the shape in behind, this is the in behind shape. You can see that right there. Okay, again, I no longer need these guidelines, so let's clear those guides out. Now that I have this, we can apply some effects onto this. We can apply patterns, and we can apply glows, that kind of fun stuff. So I'll do a wooden pattern on this one. And we'll be doing the whole shape. Let's go over to our effects, and we're on styles up here. Let's come down to patterns. There are a lot of patterns in here, but the one I want is right there. It's a wood pattern. I'll just double click on that, and it puts a wood grain pattern onto that shape. Kind of like putting a wooden frame in here. Let's now put a little glow around this. I'll do the same thing on our styles. Let's go to outer glows, and I found one here that I like. It's called the small noisy border. Double click on that, and that applies a kind of a glow around that shape. Let's take a look at that. I'll just click to a different layer here. There we are. So there is that effect. If I hide the picture in here and then hide that, you can see that we applied that wood grain to that whole shape, and then we applied that glow to the outside of that shape. Then these are just sitting on top. So there you go. That's technique number 2. Let's now move over to the right side. I'll bring back in that image. There we go. Now on this one, a little different technique. I want to put this inside of that heart shape. So again, there's going to be a clipping mask technique on this, but we need to find that heart shape. So back over to our effects, and actually I want to be going to graphics. There we go. and shapes, using these black and white shapes. Now if I scroll up a little bit, it's about halfway through, I think, on this set. We'll just see where we can find that. See, there's a heart right there. It's kind of nice. I found one that has a bit more texture to it. So I'll keep on scrolling up a little further than halfway. Here we go. There's that one. Kind of a messy, sketchy kind of a heart. So our whole range is here. We're down about 1/3, it looks like. So I'm going to double click on that. And that just puts that on the middle of the page. I can now move that in here over my image and then drag the corners out until I get this sized just where I want this. You can adjust the width if you want. You can adjust the height. All that is available. Just make sure, if you're doing this, make sure that your shape stays completely inside of the picture that's in behind. Otherwise, you're going to see an edge cut off. So make sure you leave a little bit of space around that. It doesn't need to be much, just a little bit of space around that. Choose OK. Alright, let's go back to our layers. Here we are. So we're looking at these two layers right now. I want the picture above the shape, and once again we'll be doing a clipping mask, this time clipping this picture and putting it inside of that rough heart shape, which is right there. Okay, layer, clipping mask, and there we go. There is that real nice image inside of that heart shape. Okay, that's our next technique. Now if you want to move these around, just click on them both, hold the control key down, click on both, and click on the, there we are, on this lock. You can then move them around together and they'll stay locked together. That allows you to do that repositioning on that. Okay, our final trick down here, and that's on this image. I want to change this background out, hide that background, and make it look a little more interesting. Let's just zoom in on this. This one's just a little more work, but not too much. So that is this layer right here. You can see there it is. This time I want to make a layer mask. We're going to hide the background with a layer mask. And I'll just be using the lasso tool here, the polygonal lasso tool. So let's put a layer mask on. That's that button right there. Make sure that you see that cyan outline around that image. That means that you're on the layer mask. That's important for us. Alright, now I'm going to float this, give us a little more space to work with here. There we go. I'm going to just carefully come around and make a mask. Now, if I was doing this for an actual job, I'd take a lot longer on this one step. I'm going to be doing this very fast here for this video. But I'd really take my time on this and make this layer mask absolutely perfect. And this is the key on this one. But for this demo, I'll do this quickly so you don't spend forever looking at this thing. And let's go up around the hat here. You can use different techniques. There's lots of different ways of making selections, different selection tools. Use whatever you happen to like. And you may even do what I normally do, which is use a combination of tools and add and subtract from the selection until I get it exactly where I want. But right now I'm more concerned with showing you the technique for the background, so I'm just going to be doing this relatively quickly here. Let's go along the shoulder and around the jacket, and we're just about done. Okay, we're just off. Now I want to mask out the background and not the people, so I'm going to click out here and just kind of click around like that, and then come back to my starting point, and that selects that area around the people. Now as you see, we're on white and everything is showing. If I fill this shape here with black, it will hide that part of this image. So our foreground color is already black. Let's go to the paint bucket tool, click in there some old place. There it is. I've added black onto that mask, and the black hid everything else for us. That's real easy. We can now just deselect that. Now that I have this, we can make a new layer and fill that layer. So I'm going to just grab this rectangular marquee, and I'll do a new layer right there. And I'll come down just to the bottom right hand corner, and I'll drag up. See right there where the hat is, I'll come right to that hat level and go out to the right and the left side a little bit here. And that looks pretty good. I'll let go. I'm just going to make a selection like that. We're now going to fill this selection with a gradient, and we're on this new layer, as you can see right there. So I'll reset our foreground background colors to the default, black and white. Let's go to the gradient tool. Now this is underneath, so I'm going to just redock this picture. There we are. And that works. Just want to show you the gradient. You should be looking at the first one here, which is foreground to background color. That's the one that we want to use. Okay. Now I'm going to drag my gradient from the upper left here someplace to the bottom right down here. You don't have to be exact on this, just someplace along like that. And that puts in this kind of a gradient. Now the gradient is on a layer above the picture. So I'll first deselect, and then let's pull this layer underneath that picture layer. There we go. So the gradient is now in behind, and that gives us that nice gradient. So we've removed the background, or hidden the background rather, and replaced it with this nice gradient. Let's now take this a little bit further, make it a little bit fancier, and we'll be doing that with an effect. And let's go up here to our bevels, and I'll be using this first one here. It's kind of a chiseled inner ridge thing. Double click, and that applies that bevel onto that gradient layer. You can adjust the thickness of that bevel by going up to Layer and Layer Style Settings. Here we are, bevel, and I can adjust the size right there. So I'll bring that up a little bit so it looks kind of interesting. Something around there I think is pretty good. Choose OK. Now the last thing that we need is to blend this back into our background a little bit to make it look a little bit more interesting. And we can do that back on our layers. And we're on this layer right here. There's the effect. That's that bevel effect right there. Let's just go to the blending modes, and we'll come back down to luminosity again like we used previously. Click on that. And there we go. It takes those values and blends those values into the background color, making the values match the background color. So there we go. 4 different techniques for placing pictures into a wedding album. You know, any one of these or a combination of these techniques, they're just different ways, kind of fun things that you can do to add a little bit of interest when you're putting in your pictures. You may want to use this, for a lot of your stuff possibly. Maybe have 3 normal pictures and then 1 like that, just add some variety onto the page. There you go, just a few different techniques you can do inside of Photoshop Elements. As you saw here, very, very easy to do all of these and then give you a real nice, interesting effect. Thank you for watching this special Photoshop photography project video. Don't forget to subscribe so that you will get first notice of new project videos in the future. Just click on this link right here where it says subscribe here. You can get all 12 project videos in this series along with 26 special videos demonstrating the tools and techniques that I used in these projects by clicking on this link right down here. And then thank you again for watching this training video.